Hey everyone, Vanessa here, alcoholic. My sobriety date's October 8th, 2017. And in the next couple of videos, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the Oxford group and the four absolutes. And this is basically a way that we can transform our day-to-day living, or the way that we exist in this world, and also transform our spiritual life. And if you're asking how these relate to sobriety, it is because we are looking to transform our lives in all aspects, in all respects of how we navigate conflict and relationships and the pursuit of our dreams and just the day-to-day stuff. We really need to have a transformed experience from the inside out in order to sustain a new life that no longer really supports the concepts of being under the influence of, yes, drugs and alcohol, but also under the influence of worldly things, even such as like money or politics or any opting into this illusion of any type of separateness between us and our neighbor, right? And who's our neighbor? Everybody always is your neighbor. We are all divinely created in the image of God. And so my whole thing is that if we all acted like that and treated each other like that, this world itself would be transformed. But what has to happen in order for us to really operate in this world like this is to really look inwards first, transform ourselves inwards first, and then be able to carry that message and live it out in the rest of our lives. And that takes much more than just being sober from drugs and alcohol. That is the first step. But again, like I said, in order to sustain that sobriety, we do need to make other changes and have this psychic change that the big book in AA talks about, for example. And so the four absolutes, it's absolute honesty, absolute unselfishness, absolute purity, and absolute love. And these are the four ways that we should attune our behaviors and the way that we, again, navigate this world, right? And the way that we think, and the way that we speak, and the way that we handle conflict and handle good news, even. For the addict and alcoholic, whether it's good news or bad news, we're going to have some really strong opinion on things. We're not a moderate people typically. So it is good for us to have these barometers or have this navigation system in place. I do use these four absolutes as a way to navigate my life. I don't do it perfectly. Let's not even pretend like I do. There's nobody in my life that would co-sign that delusion, but it is worth taking a look at and trying to practice. And maybe by the time I'm 80 someday, I will be 90% there on all four of these. But so the one that we are going to be talking about today is absolute honesty. And the four absolutes is what the 12 steps, if you want to watch my last video, I recommend it. I give a little bit more history about what they are in the Oxford group and how Bill Wilson used them to create the 12 steps. Honesty is not just like a cool virtue or moral to have. It is actually a way that we need to exist in this world. And it should impact every part of our lives, the way that we speak truth, the way that we live in truth. Are we living in alignment with our values, with what's important to us, with what we believe? And are we both being open, not just with others, but with ourselves? Honesty is something that I worked really hard for in my sobriety, and anybody who is around me at any given time knows that I take my honesty just as seriously as I take my sobriety, because these things are very intertwined. When I was in active addiction, I was not an honest person. I couldn't tell you the true from the false. I couldn't tell myself the true from the false. I had no real concept of what reality was because I was so steeped in delusions that I had to live in, one, to continue justifying the behaviors that I was acting out in, which were always selfish and rooted in fear and hurtful to others and to myself. And also, it was just, I actually forgot my second point, but basically I was just constantly in delusion. And so it was a defense mechanism. It was a survival tool. I didn't necessarily lie to myself and to others just because I thought it was fun. I did it because that's how I needed to survive on a day-to-day basis, living a life that I knew was not in alignment with who I was created to be. Once I got into sobriety and into recovery specifically and began to look at all of those lies and those stories that I had told myself or that I had let other people tell me about myself or that I just made up about myself, these are all other forms of lies, and they can be really limiting as well. And I have another video about the stories that we tell ourselves and how that impacts not only us, but also the people around us, right? And so I really needed to face some stark truths about myself. And it was painful. I'm not going to act like it wasn't. It was a little bit of an identity crisis as well, because I had carried around this sack full of lies with me for decades. By the time I got sober, I was just felt really raw. I was like basically asked to, in steps 6 and 7, release those and give them to God. And something that happens in doing that, it's if I let go of all these stories that I've told myself and stories that I've told myself about other people and how the world is supposed to work. One, I'm not giving myself an opportunity to live in honesty, because I'm not actually looking at situations as they are happening and unfolding in real life, because I've already tinted them with my experience and with the lies that I've put in place between me and reality in order to protect myself. And that isn't fair to people who want to get close to me, and it isn't fair to me, and it isn't fair to God either, because that's also blocking me from God. Something that you'll hear me say a lot on this channel is that my relationship to others is a direct reflection of my relationship to God. And so when I'm struggling and I'm keeping others separate from me, and I'm creating a barrier between me and others by telling myself these lies about either certain groups of people, or how I feel like they should be treated, or how I think that they would treat me, or what I think that they think about me, like all of this, all these delusions, right? When I'm not living in true honesty and presence and trying to just have the experience with the person in front of me, for example, and taking them as they are at face value and trying to love them and see them as a child of God and how God would see them. If I'm not doing that, then I'm not living in alignment to God's will, basically. And so it is really important that we practice honesty, just in the, it's not just not telling a lie. It's not just the omission of truth, and it's not just telling the complete opposite of what is true. It is how we are actually existing in this world. And the Oxford group I don't want to say fanatical, but they were really strict about this. There's no such thing as the half truth and little white lies. A lie is a lie. A half truth, it's a lie. Okay, so imagine living that radically. What would your life look like? And this is also where our reliance and dependence upon God really kicks in. When I got sober and I was doing the 4th step, and I had to say all my resentments and my part in them in the 5th step, and I had to look to release these things in step 6 and 7 and be ready to have God remove them from me. That's not something that I could do on my own will. Otherwise, I would have done it decades ago. It is something that I need to come to really have a lot of faith in God about. God, if I let go of these beliefs, if I let go of this guilt, if I let go of this shame, if I let go of thinking what other people will think of me, if I do live my life in complete integrity and honesty, I need this strength and the comfort from God that only God can give me, that things will still be okay. If I stop people pleasing and I stop sugarcoating how people are treating me, and I am just 100% honest, and I'm not giving half truths, and I'm not saying, oh no, it's okay, no worries if not, and I stop saying that, and I am actually like, oh, actually, that hurt my feelings, or it's not acceptable that you treat me this way or that you behave this way towards me. Can I be okay? Do I believe and trust in God that things will still be okay? They might stop talking to me, or it might ruin my relationship. And it's, do you want any relationship in your life that requires you to be dishonest with yourself and with others in front of God? The people who I have in my life are people that I know I can be honest with. And if there is any inkling in me that when I tell the truth, that they resent me, then I'll give them grace the first time. And then the second time, if I'm like, oh, they really don't like me when I tell the truth, I will slowly back away from that relationship. And alternatively, are these people who can also be honest with me, even if it hurts my feelings, but because they know that it is for the greater good of the situation, right? If they know that it is for my benefit, for my overall growth. So it is important to have these types of relationships surrounding you, because you're the people you are around. And we grow in relationships, and being able to be really honest with other people is a beautiful way to really grow in your relationship with God too. So again, Honesty is not just the act, not acting out and lying. I have been in social situations which did not align with my values. And I took a step back from those social situations and those communities, and I really had to assess what I was doing in them. Because to continue perpetuating these relationships with people who I didn't necessarily agree with, I was putting myself in harm's way and I was putting others in harm's way because I knew that since I was not in alignment in these communities, that I would begin to act out of character and act out in ways that are not how God would have me be. And so that's why being in places where you don't want to belong, that are not in alignment with you, is also a form of dishonesty. So and I don't know, I don't know, I just think of really like ridiculous if I was all of a sudden a member of a cult that was telling me to hate all women or something. That's clearly an exaggeration. I don't know how I would have ever found out myself in a situation like that. People do find themselves in situations or in cults or in just social groups where I don't really like what they're doing. Or if you've ever been a teenager and all of a sudden, and you have a conscience, and all of a sudden you're around the bad kids and you're like, this is not what I want to be doing, actually. You just have to make that decision to leave those groups. And I said in another video, you have to be willing to be unpopular if you want to live out the will of God sometimes, and have that reassurance and that foundation and that groundedness that God has got you anyway. It isn't an easy ask, and I have found myself alone plenty of times and feeling misunderstood a lot of times, just because I didn't want to necessarily participate, or I didn't want to co-sign and basically enable behaviors that I know are not spiritually good. And bringing this back again to sobriety, it's like we need to be able to operate in complete honesty and transparency with ourselves and with other people, because once we begin to tell lies, once we begin to live in half-truths, we begin to fear being found out. And whenever we begin to live out of fear, we begin to make a lot of mistakes, and life gets really messy really quickly. And these moral mistakes that we make end up hurting more people. And that ends up causing its trickle effects that can reverberate throughout our entire lives and impacts. Some lies get so intricate, and you think you're just telling one little half truth to spare somebody's feelings. And then the next thing you know, there's this hurricane of all this drama and hurt feelings and manipulation and cover up and stuff. And it's just, okay, maybe I should just told the person the truth. It's like ripping off the Band-Aid. So this is very much tied into our sobriety. It's not just, again, nice, moral, nice to have if you can swing it. It's no, it's a necessity. We need to be able to live in this. And one way to begin practicing this is really the act of journaling, if you ask me. In the 12 steps AA, we have the 10th step, and this is a reflection on our day. As we go throughout our day, we want to make sure that we're not living in selfishness or self-centeredness, that we're not acting out in fear, and if we have any amends to make, that we make them promptly. But you could have told me to do all of that in my alcoholism, and I would have told you literally drunk that, oh, my day was just fine. I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. But when we're in sobriety, we enter this new type of consciousness where it's a more God aligned type of consciousness. We do begin to see and reflect on our lives and being like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have, maybe I was a little bit too short. I have a staff that I manage, and I always am like, all right, I need to go back and tell this person, hey, you know what, you actually didn't do anything wrong here. I'm sorry if my response seemed a little aggressive. I just want to make sure that you understand that. Let me know if you need additional training. I do this regularly, you guys, because I don't want to gamble with my sobriety. I don't want to take the risk that, I don't know how to explain this necessarily. I don't want to take a risk that in 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, 2 months, 2 years, that I will still continue to have this resentment around this specific interaction, and that it will begin to weigh on me, and that it eventually will cause me to drink or something. I just don't know how much dishonesty I can exist with on my spiritual back, basically. I don't know. And so I just don't want to take that risk. And sometimes I'll go, like there's this very handsome gentleman that I'm in relationship with, and we had a disagreement about something, and God bless them for wanting to chat it out and talk about it. And he gave me space to say my side. And then we separated, we went our ways. And then I think like the next day, or maybe even later that day, it hit me that I didn't really hear his side. And he had tried to tell me his side, and I had cut him off and been like, and prioritized my side. And I was just like, oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't want him to feel like my side is always going to take priority. I need to make sure that he knows that he was also heard, because that wasn't fair, right? And so I went back and quickly made amends for that. And now I'm very conscious of that, to make sure that I'm always acknowledging in the moment so that I don't have to go back and do it. It's almost more awkward later when we're having a good time and being like, oh, by the way, that one time that we had that disagreement. It's awkward, it's messy, it's not very graceful life experience to live in honesty all the time and awareness, but I would rather have my life be this messy in this way than have it be messy in the blackout drunk hangover, vomit and hair type of way. You know what I mean? So going back to the journaling though, this is a good way to reflect on your day. So did you act out that day in any form of like fear or selfishness? Do you owe anyone an apology? Were you helpful to anyone today? Really doing this type of reflection. There's actually a 10-step app that you guys can download through the App Store, I think. And it does give you all the questions. It's also in the book. I want to say maybe page 84 or 86, just reflecting on your day. And I find that really helpful. And I don't always write it down now. I just reflect on it. And I usually reflect on it more when I feel this sense of dis-ease within me, because I know that there's something that happened that day that I need to process and make right the next day. And then I'll take that to meditation to ask God to give me the strength, the courage, and also the words or plan in the path to make amends where I need to, or how to handle that thing that kind of rubbed me wrong the night before. And so journaling is a really good way to get to the truth. And I do recommend handwriting, because there is something, if you can, I know some people have like issues being able to write, but it is there, and it's different than typing too. I'm sure typing can be very good, but I think that there's something about actually handwriting in a journal with a pen and paper that gets something like spiritually or energetically released or something. So writing down and writing until you get to the truth about something, and you'll know when you get to the truth when you feel lighter. Sometimes I know that there's something that's bothering me, and I will say that like in the very first sentence, this is bothering me and this is why. And won't get the relief. And then I'll say, and I think it's bothering me because this, and because of this, and because of this, and I'll go deeper and deeper. And then maybe by page 2, and by the way, these are small pages, don't act like these are like legal sheets of paper or anything. By the second, by like page 2.5, page 3, I'm like, okay, that's where I finally got to the truth. And I don't know what this is. For me, I think it's still embarrassing to be honest all the time, even with myself, even when no one else is going to read this. My God, I hope nobody else ever reads my journal. It is just like a peeling of the layers of like defense, and yeah, of being defensive about certain things and really needing to get honest about stuff. So that's one way to really practice honesty, and to practice it first and foremost with yourself. And writing is a really beautiful tool to get there. So that's one way to practice honesty, journaling. Another way to practice complete honesty and transparency is in real time, in conversation. When somebody is asking you, hey, would you mind staying late for work today? 2 hours late again for the 14th day in a row. And you are just really tired, and you are just feeling taken advantage of. You're feeling disrespected. You're feeling like you just can't physically do it anymore. And you have two options. You can be like, yeah, of course, I can do it. Or knowing full well that you're going to miss time out with your family, or you have to flake on some other plans, or you are just tired and you feel disappointed in yourself for not standing up for yourself. That's one option, but you make that one boss happy, or you get that extra money for those extra hours or whatever. Or you can just say, I can't. No. And that's it. It's uncomfortable. I'm not going to downplay the discomfort that comes with honesty. There have been many situations in my life where, and especially at work too, I think that's probably why I use that as an example, but also just with friendships, where I'm seeing someone begin to spiral and take a wrong turn that might lead them to potential relapse, for example, or to potentially hurting somebody or just hurting themselves. And it is not a good feeling to have to be the person is, do you think that's really a good idea? Or I don't think that's the thing most aligned with you. I don't feel like that's the best decision for you. And it's really important, you guys, it's really important that the honesty does not come from a place of judgment. That is going to be like the only caveat here, because when you're coming from a place of judgment, that's not actually loving, right? Like you are coming from a place of superiority, of I know better than you. And one, that's not helpful. I don't want to hear the truth from anybody who's judging me. Not even a judge who once told me that I probably had a drinking problem. Come to think about it, yeah, that was during my second DUI. I was in court and there was this judge that was like, anytime I see somebody get two DUIs this back to back so close together, it usually indicates a drinking problem and I recommend you get help for that. And I started crying. And I was like, that bitch, she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know me. Anyway, she was right. But the point being that it is that discomfort. Say your truth and be quiet. You don't have to explain it away. You don't have to, and I'm really sorry. And you don't need to do that. Just say your truth, drop it, and they will have to receive it. You're not responsible for how that person receives your truth, okay? You're not responsible for if that person gets their feelings hurt. If you are being 100% honest and you're coming from a place that is judgment free and you're doing it because it's in alignment and you weren't just like outwardly disrespectful and offensive to the person, what is there to be offended about? What is there to be upset about? Can somebody be disappointed? Yeah. We're all going to face disappointments in our lives. I don't know. I also say this to my friends. Again, just going back to, I really hope that somebody tells me the truth, even if it hurts my feelings, if it will overall help me grow. If you know that something is in alignment with me and I'm living outside of that alignment, it helps to have somebody point me and say, hey, you're going off track here. And I'm like, oh yeah, good call. It's true. I respect that a lot more. And another thing you can do is surround yourself in community or find a mentor, a sponsor, or just you can talk to a priest even if you go to church, do confession, whatever it is. You just need one safe person or a community if you go to AA meetings where you can feel safe being completely honest and showing up as your messy self. And once you can practice that and once you feel that acceptance with that one person, and again, it can even be like your mom, or it can be your best friend, it can be somebody in the program, it can be someone at church, it can be a teacher, a mentor, a sponsor, somebody who can just practice and stretch your legs and getting really radically honest. You can even tell people if you want. I'm trying to live in radical honesty here, in absolute honesty per the Oxford group. And and you'll see how many times, once you really become conscious of it, how many times you're actually not telling the truth. But it feels good to have that one person who's going to love you regardless of the awkward truths that you do begin to tell yourself. And so as you're going throughout your day, ask yourself, am I being completely truthful right now in my words and in my actions? Words, actions, truthful. Are you doing it? Are you being that right now? Am I being it right now? As you're driving, as you're going to a doctor's appointment, as you're meeting friends for lunch, as you're sitting in the meeting, as you are out work, as you are walking your dog, as you are whatever you're doing. Am I being completely truthful, practicing absolute honesty in my actions and in my words? So that's all I have right now for absolute honesty. This is just one of 4 absolutes as written about by the Oxford group. And so I want to know what your experience with absolute honesty is. Is there certain portions of your life that you find it more difficult to be honest? What is the most difficult part of your life that you find honesty most difficult? And what are you going to start? Are you going to start journaling? Are you going to start doing maybe like a step 10 app? Are you going to start practicing honesty with that one safe person? Like, I would really be interested in hearing how you want to start practicing this absolute honesty. And the spiritual aspect of this, by the way, like I said earlier, is just really relying and depending upon God, your higher power, to know that regardless of what you say or do, as long as it's done with complete and absolute honesty, that you will be taken care of still. You are still going to be okay. You are still loved by God, and that is truly who we're here to please, essentially. So I hope that this was helpful. I love you. Sorry that was a little bit long. I'm going to edit a lot of this that maybe you won't see. Okay, I love you. Bye.